Welcome in. It's Big Ten Today on a Wednesday. We are presented by Old National Bank. Great to have you with us, Dave Revson and Trent Meacham. And we continue to make our way through a Big Ten season that is predictable only in its unpredictability, Trent. And I think last night was a case in point.
What do you mean? This is just what I expected last night. And, this is what makes it fun. I mean, every game is unique, and teams are getting hot at different moments, and sometimes just when you play a certain opponent. But last night, we had some great games once again.
Well, let's dive into last night's results in case you missed them. That is today's big story. Penn State finished off a season sweep of Illinois behind a remarkable 41-point, 8-assist performance from Jalen Pickett. Nebraska dropped 82 on Rutgers on the road, handed the Scarlet Knights their third straight loss. And Wisconsin, despite not making a field goal in the last 10 minutes and 45 seconds, holds off Michigan in a key bubble battle. Let's start there, Trent. We might as well. I don't know that I've ever seen that. I mean, I'd be fascinated to know of a team that does not make a field goal for the last nearly 11 minutes of a game. Winning a game, it was not a thing of beauty by any stretch, and yet Wisconsin figured out a way. What'd you take from it?
Only Wisconsin. Their big three, Hepburn, Wall, Crowell, 8 for 25 for 19 points. Those guys weren't too efficient offensively, but I thought Wisconsin was the tougher team, the more disciplined team. I think it's evident when you look at they got 7 more offensive rebounds. They had 7 fewer assists. That led to them taking 9 more shots, 8 more free throws, so they just had more cracks at bat. They had more opportunities, and sooner or later, you're going to find some to go down. So despite shooting so poorly, I thought they were gritty, and I thought they were disciplined. They took care of the ball. They found a way to win. The freshman Connor Seaton, I thought, was fantastic. Yes. And, in Michigan, I think, once again, not executing down the stretch has been kind of their bugaboo this season. Wisconsin, just found a way to win.
Yes, this is a team in Michigan that seems to more often than not find a way not to win. And as you said, with Wisconsin, sooner or later is going to go down. It was more sooner than later. The later part was a huge issue. But I will say this. I mean, this is a team that is among the 20 worst teams in terms of offensive rebound percentage in the country. And so to your point, to crash the offensive glass 15 times, that really says something about kind of their want-to in this game. They are a team that struggles to score. I mean, I think that's just what it's going to be. We've seen that all year. It doesn't feel like that's going to get any different. And so you have to figure out ways to manufacture points, and that's what they did. Offensive rebounds, got to the free throw line, all those little things.
They did, and they were gritty. They were also very disciplined. And I'll go back to Connor Seaton. What they run for him, the actions they run, they use him as a screener. He's one of the best in the league. I think him and Keisei Tominaga, who we saw as well last night, the best in the league at moving without the ball. And a lot of defenders, you're used to guarding one-on-one. That's where you get challenged, but you're not used to moving without guarding a great shooter as they run him off elevator screens. They'll do re-screen actions, and he's fantastic as a freshman. He reminds me a little bit of another Wisconsin guy that didn't go to Wisconsin, Tyler Hero. Kind of has a bounce to his step, has a swagger about him. Really confident player. That's who Connor Seaton reminds me of. He was really good last night. And then I'd also say Kamari McGee. Here's a guy, his season high, only 6 points. Those are big 6 points off the bench. I will also go to Stephen Crowell, 11 points, wasn't too efficient, but defensively, I thought he was really good as I've seen him. He fought more to get around Hunter Dickinson in the post and really fronting him, three-quartering him, making it difficult for Michigan to get the ball into Hunter Dickinson. Now, I think he's got to get more than 9 shot attempts. He's got to get touches, but give Stephen Crowell a ton of credit. And then also, Crowell is always in a drop coverage in ball screen actions. Well, he got out on Jet Howard. He was out there and aggressive on the ball screen. I have not seen that from him. So give Greg Gard, making some tweaks there, a little bit more aggressive defensively. Stephen Crowell was very good on that end of the floor.
Just 4th win of their last 12 games for the Badgers, one they really needed. Now they get a home game against Rutgers on Saturday here on the Big Ten Network. That's a huge one for them. Penn State and Illinois, Jalen Pickett, I mean, it really was one of the great individual performances you will see. I mean, 41 points is amazing, but 41 points and 8 assists, I mean, the entire game revolved through him, Trent.
15 for 20 from the field.
He missed his last 2. He was 15 of 18.
Now, Dave, we've seen some really good performances this year. When you think of Zach Edey, he's had multiple. Trace Jackson-Davis had multiple. This is the best one I've seen. Nobody can control a game like Jalen Pickett. And From the very jump of that game, he got comfortable, knocked down some threes. And when he's got his three ball going, it's really difficult to contain him. Illinois, they started Coleman Hawkins at him. Look, if you think anybody could match up with Jalen Pickett, well, it's probably Illinois. They got a lot of length, a lot of athletes. They start Coleman Hawkins on him, 6'10", very athletic, can move his feet. And what does Jalen Pickett do? One, he brings him into the post. He scores on him down there. They put him in ball screen situations. Dane Danger gets switched out. They struggle there. They move Terrence Shannon on him, maybe the best athlete in the Big Ten. He had struggles. Ty Rodgers, who's playing really well, couldn't quite do anything with him. Jalen Pickett, he manipulates the game. You know, he's a very skilled player, but he does it with his mind too, and he sees all other 9 players on the court. He knows where they are. He knows when to get the ball to the right guys. I mean, he's so much fun to watch, but I think just how he does it with his mind, I haven't seen too many guys in recent history of college basketball play like him and dominate a game quite like him.
Right, and that he's typically dominant, and he was all that much more dominant last night. I mean, just the 5th Big Ten player in the last 40 years to score, in the last 10 years, I should say, to score more than 40 points in a conference game. They shot the ball really well, and I mean, when Penn State gets going, obviously there isn't a whole lot you can do. 58% from the field, just the 4th team this year to shoot better than 50% against the Illini. Illinois, when you talk to Brad Underwood, you know, he'll tell you, hey, we're still searching on offense, but we're a pretty good defensive team. Was this more about Penn State just clicking on all cylinders offensively, or did Illinois kind of aid and abet them here?
Well, you got to tip your cap to Jalen Pickett especially, but Penn State overall, 10 made threes in that first half. You got to give them respect. I thought Illinois, though, when I look at, they have to dominate in the paint. You got to. And they outscored them by 8 in the point. The rebounds were about equal. That's where they really got to dominate the game. Dane Danger, they had 5 guys in double figures. So they scored the ball well, but Dane Danger was not one of those guys. Only 6 shot attempts. I think you got to punish Penn State in the paint. Illinois didn't do that offensively and on the boards. But then defensively, when you have a great player, you got to make them uncomfortable. And Jalen Pickett, yes, he made some tough shots. Some things you couldn't do anything about, but you can't allow him to have easy ones. There was times where Illinois has gotten away from switching on defense, but then they were having so many issues. They went back to switching last night, and sometimes just total miscommunication where no one's guarding him. If you're going to guard anybody, guard the guy that scored 24 points in the first half. And so I thought Illinois just wasn't quite locked in like they need to be, similar to when they played Penn State back in December. And I tell you what, Penn State will make you pay with how they spread the floor, how they shoot the ball. Again, Seth Lundy, once again, what he did last night, that's right on his numbers. I think he's playing like an all-conference player. So some other contributors for Penn State, but obviously when you have a guy like Jalen Pickett, Illinois has got to find a way to, make adjustments in game. And I think typically your adjustment should be to be more aggressive. And I never saw that last night.
Interesting to see them kind of falter on that end, because it has been their strong suit. And Brad Underwood has pointed to not switching a whole lot as one of the reasons that they've been better. Penn State still has a lot of work to do. They're 6-10 in quad 1 and 2 games before their last 5 quad 1 opportunities. What about Nebraska and Rutgers? What a turnaround this has been for the Huskers. Now 3 wins in their last 4 games, and offensively, they spread the floor, and they are really hard to defend. You
said it. They spread the floor. This starting lineup, you have Lawrence and Tominaga, who's so much fun to watch. C.J. Wilcher has found his groove. And then you combine them with Sam Griesel and Derek Walker. So you have 2 playmakers in Walker and Griesel, and then you have those 3 shooters. They space the floor well, incredible skill, great shooting. I thought Rutgers almost shot themselves in the foot they almost fooled themselves. They were in that press. They generated a few turnovers initially, and I liken it to a guy that's maybe not a great shooter that knocks down a 3 or 2, and he fools himself into thinking, I can shoot 3s now, as opposed to making his hay in the paint. And Rutgers, I think, thought, we can pressure them and force some turnovers, and yes, they got some, but I thought that court was spread open, and they weren't disciplined defensively. They were disconnected. They seemed to be a step slow and always trailing, a step behind Tominaga or whomever. And I think if Rutgers was a little bit more disciplined, compact, or aggressive in certain moments, as opposed to extending 94 feet or extending half court, that would have served them better. But give Nebraska so much credit. C.J. Wilcher has been struggling, only, I think, a season low the game prior, and then he had a great game last night. Tominaga just infuses them with energy and confidence. Greasel controls the game. Walker controls the game. They use him as a pressure release. And then defensively, they changed up their defenses. I thought they were pretty darn good defensively. They didn't get just killed in the paint or on the boards. I think they actually outscored them. They outscored them by 8 in the points. So, yes, they made threes, but it was 3-ball, layup, 3-ball, layup. Nebraska, it's a very different looking team now than they were a month ago, but they're much more dangerous offensively.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had them against Illinois, and that's exactly what Brad Underwood said to me before the game. He said, I know that Gary and Bandamel brought a lot of toughness on the defensive end, and that was kind of the identity they were trying to carve out for themselves. And he's not saying in any way they wouldn't love to have those guys. Yeah. But he said in terms of figuring out a game plan against them, it's a little bit more difficult on the defensive end because of how many different guys on the floor can beat you. What do you make of Rutgers now here? 3 straight losses for them. Talk about injuries and the way that it's impacted Nebraska's season. Without Mawot Mag, Rutgers looks like a different team on the defensive end.
They definitely miss Mag, but they have the pieces to still get it done. It's not like this team doesn't have depth. I think even some of these guys off the bench are quality players, whether it's Dean Reber. Obviously, Andre Hyatt, who's been in the starting lineup, he was fantastic last night with 24 points, knocking down threes. They looked like they thought they were just going to come in and just kind of enforce their will, and they're the bigger team, the more physical team, they're supposed to win. But they didn't quite have that dog that we've come to know Rutgers as that's their identity. It's just being very gritty, grinded out, a tough team. They didn't have that last night. I mean, I've never seen a guy like Tominaga really put Caleb McConnell in circles where he was lost trying to guard him off the ball. And so they just got to get back to being more disciplined, hanging their hat on that end of the floor. They have the pieces, Dave, and I think it's a matter of just getting chemistry, becoming more connected, recommitting themselves to the defensive end of the floor. The offense will come.
This is the 3rd straight game they've allowed 45% or better from the field. Just for a means of comparison, they'd had 3 such games all year before this stretch of 3 in a row. And it does seem like, and this hasn't changed dramatically without Mawot Mag, but maybe it just kind of is becoming more obvious. They don't really have someone they can just give the ball to and say, go score. On a night-to-night basis. There are nights where that person is Andre Hyatt, or even nights where that person is Paul Mulcahy, but it's not one person every night. Or Cam Spencer, or whoever it is.
Yeah, it's tough when you don't have that guy, and they don't have it. I think they could probably get Cliff Amore in ball screen actions more and space the floor. I think it's too stagnant. If they get better rhythm and pace into those ball screens, now when he's diving to the basket, he puts so much pressure on the rim. But it's too stagnant, too much. Paul Mulcahy, 12 assists last night, but there's too much pounding the ball. I think when that ball moves and then they attack closeouts and then they attack the offensive glass, that's their best offense.
Again, they head on the road, as I mentioned. They will take on Wisconsin coming up on Saturday, so pretty significant game for both those teams. Rutgers heads home, or Nebraska, I should say, heads home for 3 in a row now. And,
watch out,
yeah,
watch out.
You kind of
like how they're playing.
Bit. Can they put something together, maybe get themselves into the NIT, or maybe get some momentum to make a run in the Big Ten tournament? We will see, but Nebraska is certainly a great turnaround story. Here's how the Big Ten stacks up in the latest edition of the Pairwise Rankings, the biggest tool in determining the field for the NCAA hockey tournament. Minnesota, which also stands atop the Big Ten standings, number 1 at 21-8-1. Joining the Gophers in the top 5 are Michigan at 3 and Penn State at number 5. Ohio State is 9th, Michigan State 14th, and Notre Dame 15th. Gophers defenseman and team captain Brock Faber joining us now. He is today's big interview. Brock, you guys are 1 win away from clinching the Big Ten title. How would you evaluate the season to this point?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been quite a few ups and downs, but all in all, I think we've had a really good start to the year, and obviously clinching will feel pretty special here, and hopefully we can get that off our chest, and then be playing our best hockey going into playoffs here. So.
You guys have bounced back and forth here in recent weeks between number 1 and number 2 in the rankings. We are obviously showing the pairwise, which is different. But how much attention do you pay to that kind of stuff? Where you are in the rankings, where you are in the pairwise, all of that?
Right. I mean, you try and tune it out as much as you can. Obviously, we're just trying to focus on each other, the guys in the locker room. Getting better each week, and obviously, like I said, we've a lot of ups and downs this year, but we've gotten better continuously each week, and just trying to really focus on that, and be there for each other, and like I said, playing our best hockey when it matters most. So.
This is that stretch, of course, where it matters most. As you kind of assess where you are right now personally, I love these stories, right? You grew up in Minnesota, you were a Gopher fan, you're part of a Gopher team having a phenomenal year. What does it mean to you when you put on that Minnesota sweater and go out on the ice?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's special. It's a dream come true. Sorry, my mic keeps slipping out of my ear. Like I said, dream come true. Something a goal of mine ever since I was, started put on skates the first time. Even wearing this letter jacket, this Gopher sweatshirt, it's definitely something I don't take for granted. Growing up a Maple Grove, Minnesota kid, it's obviously the goal is always to play for the Gophers someday. And I'm just thankful to be here, and obviously it's lived up to the dream. It's been amazing so far. So,
I think where it's doubly cool, Brock, is the fact that in the offseason you were traded from the LA Kings to the Minnesota Wild, which is the other team that you grew up rooting for. So you are going to be playing here when you go to the NHL for your hometown team after playing for your hometown team in college. Obviously, you can control the college part. You can't control the NHL part. Take us back to that moment where you got the phone call telling you you'd been traded and you're now playing for Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, it's that day's still kind of a blur in my head. Obviously, it was, I was drafted by LA, and all of LA scouts and the GM, everyone I got to know there was obviously amazing to me. But when I got the call, I was traded to the Wild. First thing I did was call my parents and let them know. And obviously then I got the call from Billy Guerin, the Wild GM, and then it kind of really started to sink in. But just the fact that I have the opportunity to hopefully play for the Wild someday is it's crazy, and it puts a smile on my face. It's something I'm so grateful for, and obviously working as hard as I can to get to a point where I can hopefully make an impact for them someday. But obviously, just like I said too, with playing for the Gophers and having the Wild behind my name, it's just special. And obviously, Minnesota kid, it's not much better than that. So,
give people a sense. I mean, I say you grew up rooting for the team, but give people a sense of how big a fan you are, how much Wild gear you have, and that type of thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of the wild gear kind of got lost when I got drafted by LA. But growing up, it was always, I had hundreds of Gopher sweatshirts and shirts and jerseys, and same with the Wild. I had a whole family had Wild jerseys, Wild hats, Wild pajamas, just crazy socks, everything, the whole deal. It was so obviously I was such a huge fan growing up, and and obviously I'm still a fan right now. So it's it's definitely, there was Wild draped all over our outfits and house growing up. So like I said, a dream come true for sure.
Well, I know a dream come true captaining the Gophers too. As you said, that was a team that everyone rooted for in your family as well. Mm-hmm. What's your leadership style? What kind of captain are you?
That's hard to say. I feel like I get that question a lot, and
I don't have any original questions, Brock. No,
I wasn't ripping on your question. I was just saying, whenever I get that question, I just feel, I just try and be myself. I try and be unselfish. I feel like I take pride in being unselfish, doing what I can to help the team win, whatever that may be. I love all the guys. I just try and be as good of a teammate as I can be, as good of a friend, as good of a person, and obviously then just work as hard as I can to become the best hockey player I can and to push my teammates as well. So I wouldn't say that I'm extremely vocal, but obviously I try to be, and I think we have so many leaders in this locker room anyway, where it's obviously I'm the one wearing the C, so but those guys make my job so easy. I mean, they're all as much of a leader as I am. So
tell me about being a defenseman. I mean, I know probably when you start playing hockey at a young age, the most skilled players play offense, and those are the guys, that's kind of where the glory is. At what point did you play offense, I guess, as a younger kid, and at what point did you realize your future was as a defenseman?
Yeah, I played forward till I was about 14, 15 maybe. But I was always better. I was always a better defenseman kind of my whole life. But, I was lucky enough to be able to skate really fast when I was younger. So I just played forward growing up because that was kind of I was able to shine a lot more up front than I was on the back end. But my dad and my coaches moved me back to defenseman at the ends of games if we were up by a goal. And then I kind of obviously just fell in love with it. I was never big into scoring goals or points or any of that. That was never really the thing that I chased after in this game. I love just being the last guy back. That was always something I loved, and defending, making it hard on other people. That was just something I took pride in at a young age, and obviously something I've continued to take pride in. So.
You mentioned your dad. I know you're really tight with your family, and particularly with your sister Paige, with whom you have a really special relationship. Tell us a bit about her.
Yeah, I mean, she's the best. We just we did the polar plunge a couple weeks ago, so jumped in a freezing cold lake. Obviously, that was fun. She was the only one that went all the way under. So she always brags about how tough she is and how she's the best skater, best hockey player, toughest in the family, which she for sure is. And we all love her. She's such a light to so many people, and obviously myself included. And she loves the game as much as I do. She's as passionate about it as anyone, and definitely, inspires me to this day. So,
yeah, she is a pretty good player in her own right. I know she plays on a team for people with special needs, and she is an absolute superstar. Tell us about her game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she's a great skating. I think is her strong suit. When she wants to, she can definitely get going. She was growing up when we were young. She was always the fastest, running and skating, and I definitely say that the thing that sticks out most with her compared to her peers and the people around her is definitely her skating. And she just always has a smile on her face. She doesn't care. Whether she scores or not, any of that. I mean, obviously she loves doing it, but, she just loves being out there. She loves being with her friends, and, obviously she's, her and her teammates are very fortunate, and, we're just thankful that there's so many resources for girls and boys like her, to be able to play sports, and, it's just, she loves it. She always talks about it, and it's fun to see for sure.
Really cool. You guys head to State College this weekend to take on Penn State. You split with them earlier this year. They are really good on home ice, as you are well aware. What are you expecting in this series?
Yeah, I mean, they are, Penn State's a really good team, obviously. They play a hard, gritty style. Up and down the lineup, they're really deep. And obviously they've kind of played the same way 3 years I've been here. They've always had an old, deep team that's really hard to play against. So obviously we need to come ready. The crowd will be rocking, and Penn State, obviously they get such great crowds, and it's such a fun atmosphere playing there. So we're looking forward to it, and just trying to focus on ourselves. Learn from last weekend, and just try and get better each night. So.
Brock, how much do you talk about what's ahead? I mean, for all the success of Gopher hockey, and it has been remarkable through the years, hasn't been a national championship in 20 years or so. How much do you guys talk about that internally as a goal with this group?
Yeah, I mean, since I've been in college, since all of us have stepped foot on campus, that's always been the goal. Bringing this program back to the top. Every guy that's here is here to do that. Here because they love putting the M and the maroon and gold on their chests, each day, and it's such a historic program, and every single guy in that locker room grew up watching this team, and obviously we're starting to get the crowds back. Mariucci's rocking again, and it's just like I said, we're just obviously there's a lot of hype around this team. We have some pretty special players on this team, but we try and stay off social media and stay off, stay out of what people are saying about us, and just focus on the guys in the locker room and doing what we can to make this program as good as it can be. So, it's been such a great year for us, but obviously, that number one in pairwise doesn't really mean anything right now. So, like I've said a lot, we're just day by day right now, trying to get better. So, when the times do matter most, we're playing our best hockey. So,
Brock Faber, happy that this day by day included a conversation with you, because it was really a pleasure to get to know you here. Best of luck coming up the rest of the way, and thanks for taking some time.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yep. Trent, two hot teams here. The Hoosiers have won 8 of their last 9. They have really been good. Northwestern obviously coming off the huge win over number 1 Purdue. What stands out to you about this matchup?
Well, they already played once, right? A couple months ago, or not
Yes.
quite even. And Northwestern got that rare win at Assembly Hall. I think this is going to be a very different game. Indiana's a totally different team from how they were in early January. TJD, I think, was a little bit banged up. Jalen Hood-Schifino was a monster that game. It went for 33 points. But he's only grown as a freshman. So I think Indiana's defense has really improved since that time. Tonight, there's a couple things. One, for Northwestern, the battle of human nature. They had this massive win, one of the biggest wins in the history of that program, possibly.
Right.
How do they respond? I mean, that's tough. I mean, the fans storm the court. Everybody's telling you how great you are. It's so emotional. You celebrate that as you should. Now, how do you come back a few days later against maybe the second best team in the conference at home? That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them, just how they respond. I mean, you can really ride that confidence, or you can be feeling yourself a little bit and come back to earth some. So I think that's the key for Northwestern. Do they maintain their edge? This game's going to be difficult to do so. I think they will as the season goes on. I just think they're a really tough team. These guys have lost games. They've been criticized, and especially those guards, their leadership, their intangibles. I believe they'll respond well, but tonight will be difficult for them.
One of the things I thought was interesting was they put out on social media some of the stuff in the locker room, and Boo Buie was talking to his teammates and said, "Hey, we're not done yet."
Yeah.
So, and that was in the aftermath of the win, right? So, it's funny because I had Indiana in the same situation last week. We had that game
Great point, yeah.
last Tuesday, and I asked Mike Woodson about it, and he said that is my primary responsibility as the coach today. Is getting this team ready to go. And we were there for the shoot around, and the last thing that he said was about you're only as good as what you do tonight, and really kind of that point of emphasis. And now Chris Collins finds himself in the same spot. He and I talked about that Monday when we had him on Big Ten Today. So I think everyone knows it, right? You know it intellectually, but there's something different between knowing it and putting it into practice, which is what Indiana did last week. They were really good in that game against Rutgers.
And I'm really glad you brought up Boo Buie, because this is a guy that's talented, but he's been maligned throughout his career. I think his leaders, I've called 2 of their games, so just being there, right there at the game, just seeing his leadership, seeing how enthused he gets when his teammates have success, seeing his emotion after drawing a charge or diving on the floor for a loose ball. I don't know if I saw that from him in prior seasons. So yes, he's scoring the ball. Yes, he's getting to the paint. He's making plays. He's really the straw that stirs the drink for them. Right. But I think his leadership has emerged this year. He's been fantastic. So they have a good guy leading him, especially that backcourt. Now for Indiana, they did get those wins, but I don't think they played great since that Purdue game. And they're going to need a better effort coming to Northwestern because Northwestern obviously is on a roll. I think a key, though, will be Northwestern. They're aggressive in the half-court defense. They trap the post. This is why I felt good about them against Purdue. You know, I somewhat predicted that game, Dave. Give me some props.
But what I noticed was you wanted to remind everyone, right? Yes. You dug back into the archives and tweeted out. But no, to your credit, you said it was a good matchup for them.
It was a good matchup. They're going to do the same thing to Trace Jackson-Davis. Right. Very different player. But here's what's going to be tough is TJD, he's averaging 3.5 assists a game. I don't think his playmaking – I don't know if we've talked about that because of his gaudy scoring and rebounding numbers, but his playmaking, his decision-making, he brings the ball up the court now. This Indiana team went from one of the worst three-point shooting teams to now in the conference. I think they're the top three-point shooting team, and I think that's largely due to Trace Jackson-Davis and his ability to attract double, triple teams and make great decisions out of that.
You think about the first game. I mean, he nearly had a triple-double in the first game against Northwestern. 18 points, 24 rebounds, 24, and 8 assists. So he was phenomenal in that game. As you mentioned, Hood Schifino had 33 points. The issue was they just didn't get anything out of anyone else, and they turned the ball over a ton. And that, to me, kind of therein lies the issue for them. If they're able to hold on to the ball, it feels like this is a game they win. But it does feel like it's easier said than done. I mean, Purdue was coughing up left and right in that second half against Northwestern, and Northwestern had a lot to do with that.
I think that's a key point. That first game, points off turnovers, Northwestern 25-6 for Indiana. Chase Audige had 6 steals in that game, and so that'll be key for them. I mentioned it's not just Trace Jackson-Davis, it's those guards. I think that this is going to come down to how do those others play? How do they play out of, when they get the ball skipped to them? I'm talking about Trey Galloway, Miller Kopp, Tamar Bates. How do those guys, the decisions they make, the ability to knock down shots, can they do that? They're going to have opportunities. If they do that, I think it's going to be difficult for Northwestern to win.
And the others have to play better for Northwestern, too.
Yes.
I mean, you look at the Purdue game. It's remarkable that they won, considering they essentially got nothing from anyone other than Bowie until the last 4 minutes of the game. You've got the reigning Big Ten co-players of the week going head-to-head, Bowie and Trace Jackson-Davis. This should be a tremendous game, again, coming up tonight right here on the Big Ten Network. It is time for our big stat, which is presented by Old National Bank. You can look at sports from a ton of different angles, but sometimes it's just as simple as how much do you score and how well do you keep your opponent from scoring. And by that measure, Minnesota is second best in the nation, trailing only Quinnipiac, who is ranked number 1, even though it is the Gophers who, as we mentioned, top the pairwise. Paul Caponegri is here now. And Paul, let's start with that series, Minnesota visiting Penn State. We were talking about with Brock Faber. You are going to be on the call for those games this weekend. Give us a sense of this matchup and what you're watching, first from Minnesota's point of view.
For Minnesota, I mean, for me at this point of Minnesota, and you kind of were getting at it with Brock, is, their final goal is that national championship. They are number 1. They're number 1 in the pairwise. You're trying to get to that playoff point, but you don't want to fall off. You don't want to get bad habits. And you saw some a little bit last weekend against Wisconsin. They struggled to win Friday, and then Wisconsin played a great game Saturday, and they lost. So now they're going on a road again, and it's in probably the most hostile environment in the Big Ten. So I think it's a good way for them maybe to kind of find their edge again and get prepared. There's 2 weekends left in the regular season. They're going to have that bye, most likely. They got to get one more game. They're going to have that bye week before the semifinal. So for me, it's all about mental, and I think preparing and being ready for the playoffs and not losing. You want to be playing your best in April at the end, but right now you want to keep the momentum going. Don't want to start getting doubt and say, oh, we're not doing that well right now. before the playoffs.
This team that's beaten a lot of good teams this year. You don't get to be number one in the pairwise if you
Right.
haven't, but 14 of their 21
Their
wins.
strength of schedule is out of control. It's that good.
14 of their 21 against ranked opponents. Again, they clinched the regular season title with their next win or with Michigan's next loss. So it seems very unlikely that Minnesota doesn't end up as your Big Ten champs. Penn State has not been playing great, and I feel like we've kind of hit this theme the last couple times you've been on. They've won just 2 games now this calendar year.
Yep.
As they head home for this big series, like kind of what do they need to get going? How do you explain what's going on?
I mean, they need to get healthy, one. They might have a few guys back. Connor McMenamin might be back. Ryan Kerwin, a sophomore guy that can bring some scoring for them, would be back. They've had a tough second half in terms of schedule, too. They played 6 of their 8 games on the road. They're getting home cooking now for the last 4 of the regular season, so it's a chance for them to kind of gain the momentum back. They're best 5-on-5. For some reason, I'm kind of, doing my homework a little extra this week, getting ready for the games. Their special teams power play penalty have not been good, but they love to play at 5-on-5. They want to go. Their MO is to shoot the puck, get it from all angles. Their goaltending thing might be a little bit of a question mark. They went with the freshman on Friday at Ohio State, going away from William Soulier, who had a rough weekend at Michigan the week before. He played well. They won, but as Guy Godolski told me this week, their plan was to play the freshman Friday, but no matter what happened, Liam was back Saturday. He didn't play badly, but they ended up losing. So I asked him yesterday. He wouldn't tell me. He wasn't quite sure to know who he was going to play Friday night. So that's another key, but they love to play 5-on-5. They've actually been one of their strongest defensive years. They're known for their offense, but I think their defense has been strong. So get that crowd behind them and gain some momentum against the top team in the country.
And that's what's weird, right? I mean, the last 4 games, they've given up 19 goals. So a team that kind of
in the armor a little bit.
Yeah, just a bit.
You don't know. It's that time of year if something's different that you've been doing all year.
Right.
Do you start second-guess yourself, or this is a way, hopefully, for them to find the way back on the right page?
What about Michigan and Ohio State playing Thursday and Saturday due to Saturday being that outdoor game?
Right.
Michigan is really playing well. So now 7 straight wins.
Since the big loss to Ohio State.
Right. So what's been different here in this stretch of 7 in a row?
A lot of magic. I mean, a lot of great individual efforts, quite honestly. I mean, led by Luke Hughes. He did it again on Saturday. We noted his 4-goal game the other weekend against Penn State.
Right.
He scores with 0.2 seconds on the clock in overtime to get the win at Little Caesars. 18,000 fans. It's a great crowd because it's half Michigan State. He comes through. I think one of the other keys is, and you hear this all the time, is when freshmen come back from Christmas, they're no longer freshmen. And they have a couple guys that have really they were good in the first half, but have been really good in the second. Gavin Brindley, to me, is one of those guys. And when you're getting the freshmen to give you the depth, they have another guy, the Chicago Blackhawks, drafted 13th overall. Frank Nazar is back in their lineup. That adds some juice. Eric Portillo's played well. He's made the saves at times because watching Michigan play, they look unbelievable sometimes, and then they just make some critical errors and leave him high and dry. And I think sometimes he actually likes that, to be honest, and he makes that big save. And you'll see him yelling and screaming. I think that's when he's at his best. But they're such a polarizing team and entertaining. And Ohio State is the complete opposite. You're kind of getting, what you're getting from them. It's just a matter if they can convert.
Let's talk about this notion of being outdoors, because I do think this adds an interesting element to it. And I don't want to say it's lost its novelty, but it is not as unusual as it once was. So we kind of now understand what do these games look like? How do they impact players?
Right.
How is the game different when you take it outside than playing in kind of the ideal, pristine conditions?
I guess it's like you compare it to football, playing in a dome stadium to playing outside, and depending how the weather is that day. If it's a, normal 40, I saw it's going to be like 40 in the 40s and maybe some sun and clouds. So that sounds good. But the one thing I did see is wind, maybe 10 to 20 miles an hour. And I've skated outside. I've not played in one of these big games, but when you're skating into the wind, you can feel it. I like when just like anyone out walking or riding their bike, like, oh, I'm going great. And you're going one way and you realize, oh, no, the wind is helping me. And then you turn around to take the mile back and you're like, oh, this is going to be a lot worse. I wish I would have gone into the wind first. So that's an element I think that comes into your mind. Obviously, you're just trying to play, but when you're going up the ice and all of a sudden a gust of wind blows into you, that's going to affect you a little bit. So I think those little things, and then maybe the sunshine. If it's sunny out, the goalies, that could affect them. You might see some eye black on some faces. The glare off of the ice, I've done that too. It's just a different look. So they'll probably get a skate for Friday and then maybe Saturday morning just to get some visuals. But it definitely throws a little, different look to a hockey game.
How important is this series for Ohio State?
Huge. I saw a thing that they're almost guaranteed to make the NCAA tournament now where they are. But just like I've said with everyone else, you want to be playing better. They're kind of in that split mode where they've been 500. Case in point, last weekend I was at Notre Dame Friday night. They played very well, outshot Notre Dame, but made a couple mistakes, and that's all it took. They only got one goal. And then Saturday night they couldn't hold a lead, and they scored 3 goals on the weekend. When they're going well, they're putting the puck in the net. They're not just getting the high shot count. Notre Dame did a good job. Ryan Bishel's a great goaltender, but they gotta be. They're a fast team. They can play with Michigan that speed. They don't have the finishers, I don't think, as deep as Michigan. So Dobish and Net's going to have to be really good, and then they're going to have to capitalize when they do have good chances.
Couldn't finish much tougher for them. They got 2 against Michigan, 2 against Minnesota.
Prepping for the playoffs. They're going to go to Minnesota after this.
Yeah.
So they've won home game, so that makes Thursday a big game at the Shot. I think they're going to maybe sell that one out for Michigan, so it should be fun. But they get that one, and then who knows when you're outside, and then a little Mariucci test before the playoffs.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Have a great call this weekend, or great calls.
We'll try.
Always good to see you. Paul
series.
Caponegri joining us. App. Trent is back with me. As promised, wanted to talk about the players who've improved the most during the course of this season. So not year to year, but during this year. And I think we have to start with a guy who maybe outside of people named Zach and Trace has been playing the best of anyone in the Big Ten recently, and that's Keisei Tominaga.
And Jalen, Keisei Tominaga. He only played over 30 minutes in one game this season to the last 4, all over 30 minutes a game, scoring 25 a game in those 4. He plays with a joy. I liken it to Steph Curry. Just the joy that he plays with. I think it's infectious to his teammates. He's so much fun to watch.
Last year, 61% of his made field goals were threes. This year, it's 46%. I mean, he's a different player. He's a
complete player.
He really is. And as you said, so much fun to watch. How about heading to Bloomington next for a freshman who's made some great strides?
JHS, okay. I think this has all been about opportunity and his talent just taking over. Once Xavier Johnson went down with the injury in early January, the ball has been put in his hands. And we've seen him grow in confidence, and he's a two-way player, and he's also maybe they have the best two-man game. Him and TJD, JHS, TJD, those two guys together in pick-and-roll situations are fantastic, and he's doing it in the clutch as well.
4 games of 20 or more points, all of them since January 1st. So to your point of improving as the year goes along. Been a frustrating year for Michigan, but Kobe Buffkin has taken some significant strides.
I've seen his confidence really emerge and also be consistent. Scored in double figures, 7 of the last 8, 10 of the last 13. That's really crucial for them. He stepped up once Jalen Llewellyn went out with an injury in December. He stepped up. Now I think the next step for him is, can he step up in those closing moments? I think he's the guy that Michigan's got to get the ball to, and then him to make the decision. Do I attack for myself? Do I get it to Hunter? Do I get it to Jet? I think that's his next step, but he's playing really well on both sides of the floor.
5 straight games hitting at least 50% from the field. Had never happened more than 3 games in a row in his career, so hitting his stride at the right time. We've talked about Northwestern's tremendous improvement. Brooks Barnheiser barely played last year, now has become a key player for them.
Don't look at his numbers because they can be kind of fluent, but I think he's incredibly productive in his role. Northwestern's a team where it seems like guys buy into the role as much as anyone, but he's one that can kind of step up and be a guy that they'll put the ball in his hands in ball screen situations, even post up a little bit, physical, wing, and he's improving. 18 points in a big road win, or 19 at Ohio State.
Yeah, that 19 against Ohio State equaled his total from all of last season. So certainly improved a lot year to year. And finally, one of the freshmen at Illinois, I know has caught your eye. A guy who played really well last night, Ty Rodgers.
Ty Rodgers, he's a jump shot away from being an NBA player. Now, that's a lot to say. 0 for 1 from 3 on the season, but it took him a while to find his niche on this team with so many wings kind of similar to him, but he's a problem when he gets in the paint. Great footwork, very aggressive going to the basket. He's going to be a big-time – he was born a Big Ten player.
The aggression really stands out to me, and the confidence. I think that's hard to find with a freshman. He seems to be kind of a vocal leader.
And he's got a maturity about him that I think bodes really well for his future.
All right. This was a ton of fun, as always. Thanks so much for joining us here. Thanks to you for joining us as well. We will see you tonight for the tip-off show before Indiana Northwestern.